This is Caravan to Midnight, the John B. Wells program. Here is John.
All right, everybody, his book is Chemtrails Exposed, a new Manhattan project. He is Peter A. Kirby, a San Rafael, California researcher, writer, and activist. In 1971, he was born, San Francisco guy, raised in the bordering suburb of Brisbane, California, attended his local schools in Brisbane. In 1989, graduated from Lick Wilmerding High School in San Fran. He studied radio, television, and film at Cal State Long Beach and San Francisco State. He's held many jobs, but worked most extensively as a taxicab driver, which I would say that's probably even better than being a bartender. Number one, you can't drink if you're a good bartender, but I suspect the stories are pretty good. The ones that you pick up when you're driving people around. They're at that moment of vulnerability, you know, where it's like they'll talk to you. We'll find out from Peter here in a minute. Let's see here. He's made many short films, produced a 2001 documentary about the San Francisco taxicab business, and he's been researching and writing about, wait for it, chemtrails since 2009. He's a staff writer at activistpost.com. We reference their articles all the time, and you can visit his website. It's peteracirby.com, where he sells his urban landscape photography. He's a regular Renaissance man, and he's a man who's aware of all that stuff in the sky. You notice how many times you talk to people and go, what do you make of those things? They go, well, I hear it means there's a weather change coming. It's like, really? Who'd you hear that from? Come on, who'd you hear that from? Yeah. Bugger off. Hey, Peter, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's this is going to be fun. You know, I saw a few of the notes that you had sent along about some topics you wanted to, some bullet points, if you will. So let me just ask you the one that got my attention the quickest, and that is Donald Trump and a chemtrail connection.
Yes. This is probably the most interesting factoid I've been able to uncover, and that was the number one question that I submitted to your producer. And the connection is his uncle, John G. Trump. John G. Trump was a member of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Radiation Laboratory. This was a laboratory that was mostly operating during World War II. It was shut down after World War II. But John G. Trump was an expert in the same areas of the physical sciences that Nikola Tesla was. He was an expert on high voltage generators. And when Nikola Tesla died, John G. Trump, along with a man from Naval Intelligence and I believe another man and two enlisted men. It's all in this book, the latest biography of Tesla by John Carlson, excuse me. But John G. Trump was assigned to examine Nikola Tesla's papers, and there was lots of Nikola Tesla's papers. We're talking truckloads full of papers that were confiscated after his death. They were confiscated because the government considered him a national security threat. It was the FBI, I believe, the Office of Alien Property that was interested in this. And John G. Trump selected papers out of Nikola Tesla's papers that were of interest to the military. He deciphered what it was. He was familiar with the science of it, and he could tell the military men, the military intelligence men, what that is, and then the military intelligence men would say whether or not it was something that they wanted to pursue further. And and I think it's important that John G. Trump looked over Nikola Tesla's papers, because I believe the New Manhattan Project started with Nikola Tesla. I'm working on the assumption that this original idea of manipulating atmospheric particles with electromagnetic energy was Tesla's idea. It is something that would be right up his alley. he was very into creating things that he thought were going to benefit humanity. And, maybe he had an idea for the manipulation of ambient atmospheric particles. Maybe he had an idea where it doesn't require plain spraying things. But, I'm working on that assumption, and that's the connection.
So John G. Trump was his father?
Oh, John G. Trump was Donald Trump's uncle. Yeah, he's dead now.
His uncle, gotcha.
But it was his uncle, yeah.
And he was at MIT in the, what was the radiological component?
It was called the Radiation Laboratory at MIT, otherwise known as the RAD Lab.
The RAD Lab, gotcha.
And yes, and I'm glad you asked, because the Radiation Laboratory at MIT went on also to develop technologies that have since gone into this global weather modification project that's going on today, which I call the New Manhattan Project. Specifically, they were instrumental in the early development of the electromagnetic portions of the New Manhattan Project.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is the area of my research that looking into the radiation laboratory at MIT. There's actually nothing in the book about that. This is the what I'm looking into right now. I'm trying to get more of a firmer grip on the origins of this project, so that I may have a foundation from which I can work and continue to trace the project forward from there.
What got your interest in this subject peaked to begin with?
It was 9/11.
Yeah.
It was 9/11. Somebody at work one day mentioned something about how it wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon, and so at the time I just image searched on Google Pentagon 9/11, and the number one search result was an aerial shot of the Pentagon with a hole in the side of the building. There was hardly any debris, and it just wasn't consistent with what the picture that I saw was not consistent with a jet airliner having hit the Pentagon, which we all know was part of the official story. So that sparked my interest. I started looking more into it and found so many holes in the official 9/11 story that it's just ridiculous. I have no doubt in my mind that it is a vast conspiracy, 9/11. And once I came to that conclusion many years ago, I said to myself, well, they pulled that one over on me, because up until that point I had bought the official story. I thought, those terrorists, they hate us, they hate our freedoms, they want to get us, all this stuff. When I realized that it was this giant conspiracy, I said to myself, hey, they got that one over on me, what else are they getting away with? So I started looking to the alternative media and going online and finding, just these vast numbers of conspiracies everywhere. I mean, it's amazing the way that the population has just been deceived on just so many issues. I mean, it's more of a question of what is not a conspiracy than what is, actually. And one of the stories that I was exposed to at that time was the chemtrail thing. And, I saw people online saying that planes are spraying us and stuff, and I didn't believe it at first. I thought that's ridiculous. Why would somebody do that? Because they're just putting it absolutely everywhere, and, they're destroying the best place to live in the world, which is America. And so I thought, this doesn't make sense. So I kind of wrote it off. But then as time went on, I continued to be exposed to more and more information. And what eventually changed my mind, I think, was the 2010 documentary, What in the World Are They Spraying, by Michael Murphy. When I saw, people with a reputable scientific background, such as Francis Mangels, taking samples of rainwater and snow that showed these incredibly high levels of aluminum, and then from ponds and other things, I've since come to know Mangels has tested soil in Mount Shasta as well and found very abnormal situations there. Then I realized this was actually something going on, and I would see the lines in the sky and realize that, I used to look up in the sky as a kid and see a jet plane high in the sky, and I'd see a contrail on it. And, this was 30 years ago. And the contrail was a very small little tail behind the plane that would disappear very quickly. I mean, we're talking in less than just 10 seconds, the thing would disappear. It would be a very tiny thing, and it wouldn't even happen all the time. You would look up in the sky every once in a while and say, "Oh, look, that plane's got a little tail on it," because it didn't happen all the time. And now these planes fly over, and they're leaving these grid patterns and big lines that go from horizon to horizon, and creating a cloud cover. I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that whole Pentagon shot, just the missing money, the office right by where the missile hit. That's no jet aircraft. Seriously, how gullible? When when I was a kid, we were into all of that stuff. We knew the velocities of various missiles. I mean, we were very warlike kiddies, And I'm telling you, a 10-year-old from my generation would have looked at that and gone, "You can't get an aircraft down that low and hit it right at ground level and put a hole in it like that." We actually had somebody come on the program one time and say, I said, "Where'd the debris?" "Well, it was just sucked in the hole." It's like, no, try again.
You know what the 9/11 Commission report says about that? It says the plane was going so fast that it vaporized.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Plane vaporized. I mean, we're supposed to believe that?
What comes into mind? Oh yeah, the 747 over Lockerbie that was blown up in the sky by a bomb. A couple of Libyans, and there's debris all over the place. Some of it's no bigger than the size of confetti. Maybe some of it's a little bigger, but there's always debris. And then how about the supposed the alleged Pittsburgh crash? And Google Earth shows that the hole was there, I don't know, a year or two before the 9/11 event. So, but the thing is, their propaganda is very effective, Peter, don't you find? Because everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but they either believe the official account, or worse yet, official account notwithstanding, they do not believe that there was anything conspiratorial that led to that event. So
they don't. Yeah, they don't want to believe. They don't. I mean, it's inconvenient. It's very inconvenient to realize that there's this malevolent establishment that has just been dominating us in every aspect of our lives for thousands of years. I mean, that's a very inconvenient thing to come to grips with.
Yeah. So, why don't we roll in the Nazi component?
All right, let's do that. Yes, that was question number 2.
Those troublesome Nazis, they never went away. They just morphed into a different form, it would appear.
That's right. I do believe the original Nazi movement was an early attempt at a new world order. It was a hard attempt, to take it over through brute force. I think that was an attempt of brute force to bring in a new world order, because I think back, even before World War II, the elites were hypothesizing about a new world order and saying this is what they want, a one world government, totalitarian and stuff like that. And then there were probably certain factions of the elites that said, we're going to do it over time, over a long time, do it incrementally, and we'll develop the science and all this stuff, and, we'll be fine. And then there were probably other components of the elites that said, you know what, we're just going to do it right now. We're going to take over this poor country that is in desperate shape, Germany at the time, and we're going to just take over Europe, turn that into the European Union, and then just take it from there and take over the rest of the world. That's how they got Japan interested. Why was Japan ever interested? They're on the other side of the globe. But I do believe that was the original attempt at a new world order. They lost, and then they realized that hey, we got to do it covertly. We have to go reinvent ourselves and come forward with the science and dominate the scientific establishment from behind the scenes. And I do believe that this new Manhattan Project is a very large part of this scientific new world order, which has been coming on us incrementally over many years now. I guess about 80 years or so. But yeah, the Nazis they did not go away. Many Nazi scientists have worked on technologies and programs that have contributed to this new Manhattan Project. Hughes Aerospace the old Howard Hughes company. He was not running that company for the last, I think, 15 or 20 years of his life. He was like probably 15 years. He was like a drugged out zombie. I mean, I think the establishment took that thing over, and it was used. The Hughes aircraft has developed many technologies that have gone into this new Manhattan Project. And at one point, a Hughes executive by the name of Alan Puckett was asked to select Nazi scientists for Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was the operation that, after World War II, brought in lots of Nazi scientists, probably hundreds of Nazi scientists, maybe it's even thousands. This is one of the little factoids that sometimes slip my mind. But yeah, it was a big deal. And in Kenneth Richardson's book, Kenneth Richardson was an executive with Hughes as well. He wrote a book called Hughes After Howard. And in the book, he said that Alan Puckett was asked to select scientists. He didn't say that he did select scientists, but you know how it is when your government calls, you answer the call, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so Alan Puckett probably selected scientists from the Nazi regime, and they were probably inserted into Hughes. I haven't established that, but I'm assuming that this is the case. But we do know of certain scientists who have been inserted into programs that have contributed to the New Manhattan Project. Let me just go over what Hughes. I made some notes about how Hughes has contributed to the New Manhattan Project. They have been developing radar, satellites, air traffic control. They were the assignee of the infamous Welsbach seating for control of global warming patent, and they've done lots of classified work. They contracted for a man who has been key in the development of the New Manhattan Project, a man by the name of Vice Admiral William Francis Raborn. They contracted for him on his Polaris project, which was a submarine-launched intercontinental ballistic missile program. Anyway, but we do know that Werner von Braun, the most famous Operation Paperclip Nazi scientist, he invented the V-2 rocket, which was used extensively in the United States to launch satellites and conduct atmospheric soundings. Atmospheric soundings is when you launch a rocket up into the ionosphere and the nose cone explodes and it disperses chemicals that allow scientists on the ground and in aircraft to map the auroral electrojet, which is the magnetic lines that go in and out of the Earth at high altitudes all around the Earth. And von Braun worked with our military out of, I believe it was White Sands, New Mexico, and along with General Electric scientists over there. General Electric is another one that's been involved in this project heavily, and they launched many V-2 rockets. The number is in the book. I forget the number, but yeah, he worked closely with. Let's see here. He was and then he worked closely with our government to do this, and then he was also, Werner von Braun was also made the director of the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, and he was a SS officer. Werner von Braun. It wasn't like he was just, going along to get along because it was just the thing at the time. I mean, he was into it. He was an SS officer. It came out later, after he was brought into the United States, and it was a scandal in the papers when it was found out that he was an SS officer and all this. And then we have Kurt Debus, D-E-B-U-S. I don't know how to say it. I've only read it in books. Kurt Debus, I think is how you say it.
Yeah.
He was a former Nazi scientist, and he was the first director of NASA's JFK Space Center in Florida. And they had about 120 of, as I call them, NASA's Nazis. There's a book of that title you probably know of. 120 of those guys helped build the Saturn rockets of the Apollo moon missions. And if people care to read the book, the NASA has been instrumental in the development of technologies that have gone into the New Manhattan Project. And then we have Dr. Martin Schilling. he was he was a Nazi scientist, and he became a vice president for research and engineering at Raytheon. Raytheon is, in my opinion, the most important company to the New Manhattan Project. They, as far as I can tell, they are basically in charge of all the electromagnetic portions of this program to this day. And also, it's interesting to note that Raytheon, at one point, I think it was in the 80s, the late 80s, they acquired Hughes Aircraft. It was either in the late 80s or early 90s, but they acquired Hughes. This was the company Alan Puck had selected, or was asked to select scientists. And, I mean, it's just this, big cluster F. But, yes, and then when Operation Paperclip was done, the remnants of Operation Paperclip were integrated into DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, specifically into something called DARPA's Research and Engineering Department. This was in one of Annie Jacobson's book, Operation Paperclip, which is the definitive book on Operation Paperclip. And DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is, as far as I can tell, is overseeing the entire project and has done so since their beginning. In fact, let me give you what I think the hierarchy is. I think that the hierarchy of control as far as the New Manhattan Project goes is the Department of Defense at the top. Under the Department of Defense, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And then under DARPA would be something called the MITRE Corporation. And we'll get to the MITRE Corporation in just a moment. But when Operation Paperclip was disbanded, it was integrated into this certain department in DARPA, and today that department continues, and it is known as the Department of Defense Research and Engineering Enterprise. They have a website, the Department of Defense Research and Engineering Enterprise. This was where the Nazi scientists ended up going.
I wonder if Mr. Hughes lost control of that company at some point, because I never believed for a minute that he turned into this derelict hippie that lived in a aluminum in a hotel room in Vegas with aluminum foil over the windows and all that stuff. I never believed it.
Well, I've read a couple of biographies on Hughes now, and I think what happened was after that horrific plane crash that he had, the really bad one where he really busted himself up.
Yeah.
That was what turned him. I mean, I think he was zonked out on painkillers after that for basically the rest of his life, and other people just swooped in and started running the company is what I think happened.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right about that. And the author of a book called Boxes was on, and he's pretty sure that Mr. Hughes retired to Panama and lived a lot longer than people think he did.
Okay. Yeah, there's been quite a bit of speculation about that as well. That the person that people were calling Howard Hughes was not Howard Hughes. It was just some guy who liked painkillers, apparently.
Wow, isn't that something?
Yeah.
Those Nazis were really something, weren't they? They, by the same axiom of don't let a good crisis go to waste. Right. I think that might be where Rahm Emanuel got that, was the collapse of the Nazi regime, because it's like, okay, well, let's, as long as we've gone to war like this, might as well strip off the assets. And they got Galen running, Reinhard Galen, effectively running. His name wasn't mentioned very often, but he's the one that put CIA on the cutting edge of everything. Most people in that endeavor know that. And then you got von Braun, as you mentioned, with the rocket program, and Willie Messerschmitt was very helpful. And it's too bad they didn't get Kurt Tank. He wound up in South America. Oh yeah, that's right. A bunch of other guys did too.
Yeah. I find it offensive. I find it offensive that the powers that be, I mean, they don't care about us, but the powers that be, or at least the American government, wouldn't after World War II, wouldn't think, well, you know what? We have capable scientists. All we need to do is get their information. We don't need them personally. You know what I mean? We need to go get their technology. We need to confiscate that. We can re-engineer things if we don't have the paperwork for it. We have people that speak German and all this. What do we need them personally for? You know what I mean? I refuse to believe that there aren't capable Americans that could have done everything that Werner von Braun or Kurt DeBoos or, you know, Dr. Schilling did. I mean, you know, we're smart. You know, we're not dumb. They're not smarter than us.
No. But maybe it was just the easy, you know, what that suggests. I was going to say that was the easy path to take, is just, let's just take the whole person. You know, maybe they can add something to the stack of paperwork that comes with them. But you know, the closer you look at these huge events, and you look past all the news reporting and the news reels, the newspapers, and all the stories that were repeated, it becomes really obvious that was one big bank job, the whole thing. Getting involved in it, you know, Germany and England getting it on. It's like you say, yeah, it did look like Hitler wanted to do that New World Order thing, but he never wanted to go to war with England or the United States. He never wanted it. He did. He definitely wanted to get it on with Russia, but he didn't want to get it on with England, the United States, at all. Mm. And isn't it interesting? All the American companies that continue to do business with Nazi Germany throughout the war and after, starting with IBM. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, I need to read that book. What's that one book about the IBM and the Holocaust? I forget the title of it exactly. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yep, I'm going to look for it. I'll bring it up here as soon as I nail it down. Okay, well, I
think it's called IBM and the Holocaust, if I'm not mistaken.
What happened to John Coleman? He wrote that book, The Committee of 300. I've tried to get a hold of him continuously for the last 5 years. I can't even figure out if the man's alive or not. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it says in the book apparently he's in Nevada. Yeah, that's interesting that you would bring that up, because actually, above in the hierarchy of the New Manhattan Project, as I've written in the book, I believe above the Department of Defense is the Committee of 300 as defined by John Coleman. I kind of leave that out because it's a whole nother barrel of monkeys. But since you mentioned it, why not? Let's get into that. So you're aware of the Committee of 300, and I have read Coleman's book. But you know what I find even more convincing than Coleman's book, because he's a little light on sources. In fact, very light on sources in his book. He says that it was stuff that he was able to access at certain libraries, and they don't allow photocopies and things. But yeah, he lays out quite a convincing case, and it's one of those things that it's just it's an intuitive kind of thing. Once you know how the world works, intuitively that there are very powerful people collaborating and conspiring. You can see it in the way corporations roll things out globally. Different corporations will roll out the same agenda worldwide simultaneously. And it's like, they must be working together. They don't say they're working together. They just kind of do it. But yeah, Coleman's book is quite interesting. I think Coleman's book is kind of a turnoff for a lot of liberal-minded people, because he is really ultra-conservative. If you've read his book, you know that, and I'm actually kind of sorry to see that, because I'd like to see more people who consider themselves liberals to be turned on to this type of information. It's not one of the conspiracies that liberals find palatable necessarily. There are certain conspiracies that liberals find palatable, and other conspiracies that conservatives find palatable, and this certain conspiracy just seems to be one of more conservative-minded people tend to latch onto. But other than Coleman's book, there's also been a study recently which the top lawyer for the World Bank has been flogging, something called it was a PDF, a report done by 3 mathematicians from the Zurich Institute of Technology in Switzerland. It was called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Are you aware of this study?
I am not at this moment.
Yeah, it's a PDF that you can download from the internet. I got it from Karen Hudis. She's the top lawyer for the World Bank. Karen Hudis is a whole other story, but she has been flogging this thing, and it's quite a convincing study done by I think one of the people who did this study was the chair in either statistics or mathematics at this very prominent European university. The Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, is known as one of the top universities in Europe and if not the world. And they write in this report that they have mathematically determined this group of corporations that act as one. This group of, I think it's about 200 global corporations that act as one, and they say they can. I'm not very good at math. I'm not a math and a science guy, but in the abstract, they just lay it out. They say in the abstract, they say we've always known intuitively that this group exists, but here we prove it mathematically. And they use a lot of complex mathematics and statistics to define what they call the network of global corporate control. And this is the same group that Coleman is talking about, the Committee of 300.
Yep. It's if you're not interested in this stuff, then it doesn't affect you. But if you are interested in it, it's really disturbing when you learn that you have no idea what's going on or who's running anything. You know the faces that you see, and you know the names that are repeated over and over again on television and radio, but that's all you know. You don't know. You don't know a damn thing. You really don't. You think you do, but you don't. You think you know what you're talking about. You don't. And I hate that. That is why we are here, so that when we open our mouths, maybe we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're trying to expose them. I mean, the more we talk about it, it's just like waves, lapping at a cliff on the beach. It's eventually gonna fall. We're chipping away, and there's millions of other people around the world that are doing what we're doing, and I think their days are numbered.
I think you're right. I really do. There's no hand wringing going on this side of the transmission between us. There isn't. All you have to, and it's so easy to narrow your focus, but you can always widen it. I mean, you've got your hand on the mental ring of your telephoto there, so you can zoom in, or you can pull it back out. But man, when you see this stuff going on at the Democratic National Convention up there, and you see the absurd behavior of these various groups and these principles, and then you go, okay, that's juvenile. That's not even juvenile. That's actually, stupid. And then you go over and you look at the Republican side of things, and I'm okay for now with Don Trump. You can't be a billionaire and not be a connected guy. That's not going to happen. Talk about it's who you know, not necessarily what you know. Yeah, being a billionaire, you need to know some people. But I still think that this is the only chance we have to break away from establishment politicians, unless Mr. Trump turns out to be some kind of an establishment politician, but a stealth one, but just nobody knows about it. And I can't imagine how something like that wouldn't have leaked out somewhere, but as far as I know, you may be quite aware of a leak about who he really is.
I don't know. No, not me. I do support Trump. It's not something that I bring up usually too much because I don't want to alienate people who don't like him, because I understand his presence is very divisive. But honestly, I believe that, just like you said, Donald Trump represents our last chance to restore this republic. And he's okay. If you elect Hillary Clinton, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get the shaft, is what you're going to get. You're going to get 4 more years of Barack Obama. You're going to get corporate dominance, corporate rule. And if I guess I'm speaking to the Bernie supporters right now who recognize who Hillary is. I understand that there's a lot of people who support Hillary. If you ask me, it's just a mark of ignorance, because she is well established as somebody who does not work for us. Donald Trump may be somebody who works for us. He may very well be somebody who works for us. In my opinion, he is somebody who's going to work for us. So I think you're right. He is our last chance.
Yeah. Well, we talk with and occasionally, Well, so far there's only been one geoengineering conference that I've been in attendance at, and that was the one up in Redding, California last summer. But can't believe it's been almost a year since we were there, but oh well. Dane Wigington says this chemtrail thing is bad news. I think few people would disagree. There seems to have been an adjustment in the formula, or people are becoming used to it in some way, because I used to notice that about 48 hours after a really heavy dosing, we're not seeing the heavy dosages that we used to. I mean, I've said this many times. I went out at 9 o'clock in the morning on my motorcycle and took my camera with a couple of extra cards, just in case, and photographed the sky from about 9 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon, with maybe 20 minutes between shots, and just watch the progression of what turned into an overcast sky, and virtually all of it had been made by aircraft. Within 48 hours, two things are happening. Slight respiratory irritation, and people are driving like they're getting along, but they're slightly disoriented, just ever so slightly disoriented, just ever so slightly confused. But they're not throwing each other the finger. They're not yelling at each other. They're not jerking their wheel of their car, and swerving towards somebody like, I'll smash you, that thing. Right after the Dallas police were shot downtown, which ticks me off, to put it mildly, on a spectacular level, that something like that could even happen. Again, just staying somewhat neutral, if in fact it did happen the way that it appears that it happened. And these guys are real good at these guys who pull off these false flag operations and so forth. They're real good at it. I mean, usually they are. They're good enough at it that the public buys it. But I digress. I noticed that the driving habits of these people became, of the citizens here in Dallas proper, became really, really aggressive over the following week. I had not observed driving habits like this since the 80s, when people were, just behaving on a borderline insane level, swerving their cars and yanking their pistols out and giving each other the one-finger salute and just, yelling back and forth. I was seeing all of this. I didn't see anybody pull their pistol out, but thank goodness. But no chemtrails to be found. And I'm going, all right, now what could be causing this? Everybody's having a bad day on the same day? No. The cops are down. Well, if they can get to the cops, then that means that we're pretty much free to behave the way we want to. It was just a little taste of what would happen if there were an emergency situation and the cops were nowhere to be seen. I don't think the citizens are going to get along with each other very well. Then I go back to this chemtrail spraying, and I go, unless you sprayed them with something and made them all docile to where they're just kind of bumbling along there. They're not driving especially well. They're crossing the line and they're doing this, and this one needs to turn. But nobody was getting mad, Peter. It was weird. Nobody blew their horns. Nothing after these heavy sprayings. Now, are you getting any information like this from other sources that have said they've observed the same symptoms? I can't be the only one.
Right. There is a whole area of study that's called air pharmacology, which is covered a little bit in my book. This may be one of the things that they're doing to us. My position is they've been spraying us for 20 years. Even goes back even further than that. I think for probably about 70 years. They've been spraying us with whatever they want, whenever they want. God knows what they're spraying us with. But we do know that there is a whole area of study that's called air pharmacology, and there have been a scant number of studies that have been made public. I only know of two actually, but it's quite revealing in the abstract. They just say, we've been spraying pharmaceuticals and vaccines over vast areas of third world countries, so it's okay. They're not doing it here, and they're spraying those people over there. So, but I think if they made a study where they said, we've been spraying you for the last 10 years with vaccines and pharmaceuticals, I think there might be a little bit of an uproar. I would hope.
A little blowback for that, probably, yeah.
I would hope, but no, they're working on it. They're working on it, and although I have not found this information, there's been a host. I don't know if you know the radio show Night Watch, which I've done a couple of times. The main host, his name is Todd Sheets, and the first time I went on that show, he was talking about how when the chemtrails first started, President Clinton. He says that President Clinton commented on it and said that planes are spraying stuff to make you docile, to make you, relax and just make everything cool, so drugging us, basically. I haven't been able to find that information, but there is the air pharmacology thing, which that whole area should probably produce more documents and more public studies in the years to come.
So who's making these chemicals? Is it a Dow, DuPont, Monsanto deal, or what?
Well, the names Dow and DuPont do pop up in the weather modification literature. They have been popping up consistently. But the name Monsanto I find the most interesting. I find Monsanto very interesting as a possible producer of the spray for quite a few reasons. This was one of the questions. They have extensive ties to the Department of Defense going back quite a long time. We know that they produced the Agent Orange and Agent Purple and Agent White and Agent, all the different agents that they produced that were the defoliants used in Vietnam. So they were working with the DoD back then, and as I say, I think the DoD is near the top of the hierarchy. Let's see here. Charles Thomas. Charles Thomas is basically the most important person to the founding of Monsanto. He was a key Manhattan Project chemist. The Manhattan Project mostly required chemists and physicists, and he was big on the original Manhattan Project, Charles Thomas. So he was deep in with the military-industrial complex. Thomas got his chemistry degree from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which ran the radiation lab, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology has been very instrumental. One of the main sources of new Manhattan Project technology, in my opinion, maybe in fact the most prolific producer of new Manhattan Project technology over the years. He got his chemistry degree from MIT. He was a Carnegie Corporation trustee. The Carnegie Corporation runs the Carnegie Institution, and the Carnegie Institution has that name pops up consistently throughout the weather modification documents, and is mentioned, I believe, multiple times in my book. I've just come to recognize recently, after the most recent book that I read, a biography of Vannevar Bush. He was a guy who started he founded the radiation laboratory at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was the head of the Carnegie Corporation for many years back in the 40s and 50s. Vannevar Bush looks very instrumental in this whole thing with his Carnegie Corporation, of which Charles Thomas from Monsanto was a trustee. And then Charles Thomas worked for the Rand Corporation, which is another name that comes up over and over again. The Rand Corporation has been deeply involved in weather modification projects for many decades. And Charles Thomas also served as a member of the corporation of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Apparently they have a corporation that runs the whole school. So he was a member of that group. Board, probably, I think it's the board. He was a member of the board. And then Monsanto's, that's it for Charles Thomas. But he was very instrumental. I think he's like the main guy as far as the founding of Monsanto is concerned, and he has all these connections to other groups that have been involved in producing this technologies that have gone into the new Manhattan Project. And then Monsanto's old research laboratories were located in Dayton, Ohio. Now this is significant because Dayton, Ohio is basically right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I bet you knew I was going to say that. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is another location that has been extensively involved in specifically the development of the aircraft. They have developed lots of technologies which I think have gone into what I call the chemtrail fleet. And the chemtrail fleet is a whole nother barrel of monkeys to get into, but I think there is a proprietary fleet of aircraft specialized and it took a long time to develop these planes that are specifically used for the spraying of chemtrails as part of the New Manhattan Project. And also, but as far as Monsanto is concerned, Monsanto was in Dayton, Ohio, right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base conducted studies which involved aluminum nanoparticle inhalation animal testing. Multiple studies where they would put little masks on rats, and there would be little aluminum nanoparticles that they would be forced to breathe, and then the scientists would record, how long they lived, what their health was like, whether or not their lungs were damaged or they were okay, and all this stuff. I find that very interesting that they would be conducting a study like that. And what makes it even more interesting, multiple studies, what makes it even more interesting is that in at least one of these studies, they say, this is important because people can be exposed to nanoparticulate aluminum by jet fuel exhaust. Mm-hmm. They say that in the study.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. And then, and lastly, we all know who Monsanto is. They have basically zero regard for the environment and human life. If you read The World According to Monsanto by, I forget the woman's name, it's the definitive expose on Monsanto. It was made into a documentary as well, but actually the documentary came first, and then Marie Saint Raban, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And then the book came later, and wow, you read that book, and if you want to know about a company that really doesn't give a rat's behind about you or the environment or anything else except making money, that's Monsanto. And it would take that type of attitude to be the company producing the spray that's just sprayed over us and is basically mass murdering us and wrecking our environment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Monsanto. I think the indications are that it's Monsanto that's producing the spray.
What are they trying to do? Are they trying to annihilate the population or what?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think that plays into it. I didn't want to believe that at first. People would ask me about that. And before I really looked into it, I'd say, well, no, it's weather control. But you know what? You can't deny some things. You can't deny the fact that John P. Holdren, the current, science czar in the executive branch of the federal government, John P. Holdren is a big geoengineering advocate. So he's saying that, we don't want to, we don't really want to do this, but if global warming gets bad enough, we're going to have to spray you out of airplanes and stuff, So he's advocating it under certain circumstances, and he is also maybe the most prominent population reduction advocate as well. This goes back to the 1970s in his book Ecoscience, where he's saying too many people, got to kill them off, put stuff in the water. I don't think he said spray stuff out of planes in there, but he's talking about forced abortions and planetary government and all this stuff to control the population. So, you see one of the most prominent advocates of geoengineering is also one of the most prominent advocates of population reduction, and that's a pretty simple equation. And the same story goes for Bill Gates. Mr. Microsoft, William Gates. He's another one of these guys like Zuckerberg. It's like they make a few billion dollars, and all of a sudden they are our moral conscience. Which makes absolutely zero sense. But Bill Gates has been funding geoengineering research with Ken Caldeira and David Keith. The two most prominent geoengineers. So he's not only an advocate for it, he's funding research in that area. And he has famously come out and, said that there's too many people and we got to, basically wipe out like 95% of the population of the earth, to please him and the corporations, I guess. So, yeah, there is definitely this this angle to this story. And you see also, just elites across the board just advocating for population reduction. It's just, one of their little hobbies. So, yeah, it's pretty undeniable that there is that aspect to the new Manhattan Project and all the sprays that we're seeing.
What kind of money you think is being spent on this? Looks like quite a bit just to keep the aircraft up there. But then again, this government, and I take it the government knows all about it. I mean, these guys wouldn't just go out there and freelance. The thing that really worries me is, having said that just then, that was my statement, but at this moment, I'm thinking that that statement might be subject to revision. I wonder how many agencies are out there freelancing with this stuff.
I'm thinking it's a big joke on us. You know what I mean? Either that, they either think it's just like a joke. It's like, oh, look at these stupid dummies. I know I have an airtight house. I have a HEPA filter in my car. Look at these dummies, got to breathe all this stuff in. It's either that, or they're like some kind of death cult. With the global warming thing, and they're just like some kind of Jim Jones thing where they just figure that everybody's going to die along with them, and let's just do it because the humanity is wrecking the earth. And I'm not sure which one it is. It might be a hybrid of those two, but it's definite. I don't have much doubt that it's known in many of the let's say the corridors of power in Washington. But the cost. Let's do the cost here.
Yeah.
The cost is very murky at this point. It's very difficult to determine what the cost of this might be. I mean, we can assume that it's a huge amount of money. I mean, what I outline in the book is the development of this chemtrail fleet. So the development of supertanker aircraft that are specifically designed to participate in this program. We're talking about command and control centers with just incredibly huge amounts of technology installed into them. We're talking about development of the sprays. We're talking about production. We're talking about, this ionospheric heaters. We're talking massive amounts of money. I don't think it's a stretch to say that since this thing began in 1946, as I outline in the book, that over $1 trillion has been spent. In fact, I would kind of see that as somewhat of a conservative estimate. What we do know is that shortly after 1946, as I outline in the book, as I demark as the beginning of the New Manhattan Project, there was a huge governmental expanse into the atmospheric sciences, basic research into the atmospheric sciences. This serves as the foundation of the New Manhattan Project. We didn't really understand how the atmosphere really works until the government started pouring millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into basic atmospheric research starting in about 1958. So they kind of did some minor experimentation in certain aspects of the New Manhattan Project between 46 and 58. But by the time 58 rolled around, they had the whole bureaucratic mechanisms in place. 1958 was when ARPA was established. ARPA was the precursor to DARPA. It was originally called the Advanced Research Projects Agency. 1958 was when NASA began. And 1958 was when the MITRE Corporation was founded. We need to get into the MITRE Corporation, but let's continue with cost here. Okay. Between 1958 and 1978, our government is on record as spending roughly $25 billion. This is adjusted dollars. I went back and adjusted everything for inflation. $25 billion for the initial expanse of basic atmospheric research. This was from a series of reports that the government published called the Interdepartmental Committee for Atmospheric Sciences Reports, or the ICAS reports. These were published between 1958 and 1978 on a semi-annual basis, and they covered all the expenses, all the on-record expenses, and some of the things were classified in there as well. There's always been classified research into weather modification in the atmospheric sciences, but beyond that, we have these black budgets where we have no idea where this money goes. Someone wrote a book that I have to read. It's about the government's black budgets. But, I mean, right off the top, without even reading that book, we all know that our military gets billions of dollars every year that we have no idea where it goes. There's no accountability to the Congress or to the American people. It's a matter of national security. I mean, they just say the magic words and make it disappear. And, they've been doing this for a long, long time, ever since right after World War II, if I'm not mistaken, which would be consistent with the time frame for the development and implementation of the new Manhattan Project. So, we don't know, beyond the initial expanse of roughly $25 billion in adjusted dollars, it's really hard to say, but we know this thing is huge. We know that it's not cheap to do what they're doing. I mean, just something I didn't even mention, the whole cover aspect of it, the whole disinformation campaign stuff behind it. I mean, it's like a Berlin Wall of disinformation, as Alex Jones might say. It is a seamless edifice that has been constructed to just absolutely ridicule and marginalize anybody who would dare to suggest that chemtrails are real. It's really insidious the way all this has been crafted. They really try to make the trolls online and the journalists, the so-called journalists, they really try to really ridicule people just as hard as they can, make people feel as ridiculous as possible when they should dare to even suggest that this is going on. But that's probably been quite a big expense in that area.
Good Lord, man.
Yeah, so we don't know, basically. We don't know. Hopefully it'll come out in the future. We know how much the initial expanse into basic atmospheric research cost, but beyond that, it's huge, but we don't know what it is.
We've been hearing about, and in fact there have been some photographs purportedly showing these gigantic laser boring machines, and we've been hearing about magneto-leviton trains running back and forth all over the place underground. I suspect much of that is true, because the reality is always a lot more futuristic and wow. It's not woo woo. It's like, wow, you have no clue. I mean, you wouldn't believe the weird stuff that flies in and out of Love Field in the middle of the night. All kinds of weird stuff. I mean, you're not going to see this at the local air show. You're not going to see it. But I'm wondering. I've been hearing stories about submarine bases beneath the surface of the state of Arizona and all kinds of stuff. So is there something out there in your research that suggests that there's an underground base where these aircraft are actually stashed? Because I don't ever see those super pale gray, almost white, slightly bigger than corporate jets. That seem to be the ones. You look at them through binoculars or a good telescope, if you can get a bead on them. Then it's like when this guy that I know from the Netherlands was flying into L.A. So I was talking to him about this is years ago now, almost 10, and he said, John, one of them pulled up next to us when we were on the last 20 minutes into LAX, and I saw the trail start coming out of the wings, out from by the engines. I said, really? I said, it wasn't white or like super light gray, was it? And he looked at me and he went, yeah. So it's like, where do they hide these things? Is there some underground base where they're hidden? Because I got it on my note that you're thinking there might be one on somewhere near Alaska where a lot of weird stuff goes on.
Yeah, I'm speculating about this. Nothing about this is in the book, but I find it interesting to speculate about and put it out there. Maybe other people can get back to me with what they think about it. But, I don't you think that it would be advantageous to have a home base for these aircraft? Someplace that they can always rely upon to have whatever these aircraft need. they may be using Air Force bases and National Guard bases around the country as sort of pit stops. These bases may have some things that they need. Maybe they got some chemtrail spray to load up on or whatever. But if you have a specialized group of aircraft, highly specialized, highly technical, you would need some place that would have everything that they ever might need. I would assume that they would call this home base the garage, being that I work at a taxi cab industry, and I always know that there's one place where I can always go to get what I need. If I need this, I need that. It's like, well, I got to stop by the garage. They have it over there. They'll take care of you over there. So I tentatively call this supposed base, this aircraft base, the garage, and I speculate that it would be in Alaska for quite a few reasons. One right off the top is cover. I mean, we're talking about, we're talking about in the interior of Alaska. There's a certain mountain range that divides like the coastal areas and in the interior. If you're talking about on the other side of that mountain range, I mean, who goes there? I mean, not many people go there. And so right off the top, just the remoteness of it is something that would be advantageous if you don't want it to be found. Another thing about Alaska is that it's very strategic on a global basis. If you look at Alaska on a globe, you'll see that Alaska is just about equidistant from the most industrialized areas of Asia, specifically Korea and Japan and other countries in northern Asia. It is also largely equidistant to Europe, specifically Northern Europe. It is also largely equidistant to America, the contiguous 48 states down here. So it's very strategic, and not only that, but in William Thomas's book, Chemtrails Confirmed, which is a great source of information. This was published back in I think it was 2004, and I have a lot of respect for William Thomas and his book Chemtrails Confirmed. He did an interview that appears in that book. He interviewed a guy named Dave Dickey, who works in Edmonton, Canada, which is sort of in the middle of Canada there, sort of I guess straight up from about Montana or so. And this guy Dave Dickey, he has friends in the air control tower in Edmonton, and he has access to had access to the air control tower, and Dave Dickey said that he would be up there with his buddies in the air control tower watching these planes originate from Alaska spraying chemtrails, and they would come down, and he said they would grid the Edmonton area and then head on down into the rest of the United States. So and all the people in the air traffic control thing agreed with him. They all sit there and watch it happen. So that there's some evidence to it there. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Also, Alaska is like the center of the ionospheric heater world. Ionospheric heaters are these ground-based antennas, which are probably used as part of the new Manhattan Project to generate the electromagnetic energy, which is used to manipulate the atmospheric particles. And Alaska has been a hotbed of development of these ionospheric heaters over the years. There's three of them in Alaska. One is, of course, HAARP, the famous high-frequency active auroral research project, which is the largest ionospheric heater in the world. But there's also two lesser-known ones there. One is something called High Pass, which is run by UCLA. They say it's been shut down, but I have actually my science advisor, who's an expert in electromagnetic energy, doubts that assertion. But there's High Pass, and then there's also something called they have an ionospheric heater at Poker Flat, Alaska, which has been a place where they have launched many of these sounding rockets used to map the auroral electrojet. Ionospheric heaters are used in the mapping of the auroral electrojet as well. And see, it's significant that these ionospheric heaters are in Alaska because I also speculate that over the years, the experimental planes used in the development of the new Manhattan Project have followed the ionospheric heaters around. Because if you're going to be experimenting, in the vein of the new Manhattan Project, well, you need an ionospheric heater, you need a plane spraying stuff, right? So you're going to need these experimental planes to be taking off and landing somewhere somewhat nearby, like I'm suggesting within 500 miles, something like that. So I'm suggesting that the experimental aircraft have followed the development of the ionospheric heaters. So this may be what's going on in Alaska again today. And then I speculated in my interview with James Corbett that it might be something called Clear Air Force Base. Actually, Clear is not an Air Force base; it's an Air Force station, which I've come to know. There's actually only 2 Air Force bases in Alaska. One is Elmendorf, which is the famous one that's on the coast, the big one. There's another one that's more in the interior called Eelson, and that one's a little lesser known. But what my current thinking is that the base would either be at Eelson, or it would be completely secret, completely unknown, just specifically dedicated to the chemtrail fleet, which actually is what I think is more probable, that there would just be a completely dedicated Air Force base, covert Air Force base. Let me see what else here.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, and then there's quite a bit of reporting and information available online speaking to the possibility of underground airports. In the former Yugoslavia, they had a long time ago, the base was completed in 1968. There's a Wikipedia listing for a base that was an underground base for aircraft. I believe they would land on a strip, and then the planes would taxi into underground facilities. We know about all the underground stuff at Denver International Airport. God knows what they're going to use that for, but I don't think it would be too beyond the pale to consider that a plane might be able to drive underground into those facilities. What else here? Wired magazine reports that North Korea probably has underground runways for aircraft, and they say that there may be as many as 20 airfields in North Korea that use underground runways. And this is not something that's very hard to find. Like I said, you just search terms like underground airport, underground runway. You find tons of stuff. I've heard about an article apparently that appeared in the Fresno Bee back in like the 30s, talking about an underground airport. And like you said, we know that we have the capability to dig vast facilities underground. This is quite well known. I believe it's within the technical capabilities of our military and of our government. And then there's someone else turned me on to some. I already mentioned the idea that bases around the country might be used as sort of pit stop locations,
yeah.
and that was largely asserted by Ted Gunderson, the former FBI chief, famously made a video talking about how he had seen chemtrail spraying planes on the ground at the Lincoln, Nebraska Air National Guard facilities, and as well as at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And then also, I got an email from somebody. I know this is not like the most firm source, but I got an email from somebody who suggested something that I find interesting. He suggested that there are planes that are being retrofitted for chemtrail spray to basically be integrated into the chemtrail fleet, but it's done in a more of a rudimentary fashion. Not so specialized as I assert in the book. This person who emailed me was saying that they are just given the bare minimum for what needs to be done to accomplish just the spraying of the material. and then these planes are repainted in company colors of certain existing companies. And this is why I have seen, this may be why I have seen videos of known aircraft companies. It'll say like Trans World Airways on the side of it, or Flying Tigers, or whatever company it is, and it's spraying chemtrails. This may account for that. But that's about all I can tell you about that stuff.
All right, so let me ask you this: what's next for you? Where do you take your investigation next without tipping off the wrong people? What you're going to do next?
Oh no, I just give it to you, whatever I got. What I'm working on right now, like I said earlier, is the origins of it and the MIT radiation laboratory, and I want to get down to the very earliest the very earliest developments of these technologies, and the very earliest people involved. And it looks to me like it was these men who were very instrumental in the original Manhattan Project. They were physicists and chemists, and they were all working out, or these are men who were working out of the MIT's radiation laboratory. These are men like Vannevar Bush, men like Carl Compton, men like Ernest Lawrence, the founder of Lawrence Livermore National Labs. There's a very famous photo that shows all of these men sitting together in the same room. James Conant is another one, and Alfred Lee Loomis, and Arthur Compton. There, I've named them all. And these guys, I need to read more biographies. I've read the biography of Alfred Lee Loomis, and I've read the biography of Vannevar Bush so far. I will read the biography of Ernest Lawrence, another person who looks very much involved in the early development of the technologies, is a very famous physicist, Luis Alvarez, who was also instrumental in the original Manhattan Project. So I'm trying to right now concentrate on that transition from the original Manhattan Project to the new Manhattan Project. I'm sort of gathering that people that's been a large part of the doubt that's been raised about my work. It's like, they want to see more of the reasons why I'm calling this a new Manhattan Project. I think I make quite a convincing case in the book already. There's lots of evidence for this, but I really want to solidify those earliest portions of the development of this project, and then I can trace the rest of it all the way through. You get that foundation, and then you can figure out who was doing it at first, and then you can trace the whole thing up until today. That's what I intend to do.
Wow. By the way, going back to an earlier little, just a little detail, IBM and the Holocaust. That's a book written by Edwin Black. That's the guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
IBM Holocaust. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody was trying to figure out. Say, how did he get the names? Well, I'll give you three guesses: I, B, or M. Oh, it's all three. So there it is.
Wow. Yeah. That name's been popping up. The IBM name has been popping up for sure. They have been deeply involved in the supercomputing aspect of the new Manhattan Project. They've been deeply involved in supercomputers, and some of their supercomputers have actually many of them have been used in weather modification in the atmospheric sciences. So right off the top, I can see a connection there.
Well, look, I've really enjoyed this. Now, where we get the book where?
Well, you can get it, the place that I would prefer that people get it. Here, this is the book, by the way. It's been over here in the corner the whole time. The place where I would prefer that people get it is createspace.com, their e-store. And you get there by going to my website, peterakirby.com. And there's a couple, 2 or 3 links on the homepage to the Create Space e-store page where it's available. It is available on Amazon.com as well as a paperback and an ebook, but I get a bigger royalty from the Create Space e-store, so I want to direct people there. Amazon will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty scary cover that you've got there. You know, the looks like the maybe the Lincoln Memorial something, and you've got GE, DARPA, UN, Raytheon, RAND, NSF, satellite dish in the background, little family walking, little stick figure family walking down the trail there, and a big old jet going overhead with all these crisscross chemtrails. It's insane. It really is.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break people out of their freaking trance. You know what I mean? It's people like, how can this happen? How can this happen? How could this be? How could this be that they get to just fly planes over and spray all kinds of crap over us? I mean, it is. It's like a banging your head against the wall. It's like, how is this happening? How is this happening? I mean, it's been quite frustrating. Thank God I haven't seen chemtrails recently. I haven't seen basically any. I've seen very few over about the last month or two. I'm thankful. I don't know what's going on in other areas of the country, but over the winter and into the spring, they just absolutely annihilated the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's just crazy. You go out when you're out there and you're aware of what's going on. It's like, how can you go about doing your daily routine? How does life go on? I mean, what would happen in a responsible situation if we had a responsible government? At the first whiff of anything like that, all kinds of alerts would be issued. People would be told to stay indoors, and there would be investigations, and all kinds of stuff would be going off. How could anybody spray stuff out of planes intentionally? And it would be the hugest story in the media. I mean, it speaks volumes about the levels of corruption in our society that this is allowed to happen.
Well, maybe at some point in the future we will. I'll tell you what a lost concept. Accountability in government. Oh yeah, another lost concept. A government of, by, and for the people. Who are the people exactly? Maybe we just think we're the people, and we're really not the people that they're talking about. These aren't the people we're talking about in the Constitution. It's actually us.
These aren't the drones you're looking for.
Yeah, we're not the drones that are supposed to be in charge of this. Real pleasure talking with you, Peter. No kidding. And I got to ask you something before you go, though. So, what was it like being a taxi driver? And I said before you came on that I suspect this is like being a bartender who's sober and just listening to people talk.
Yeah, I suppose it's like being a bartender. The main difference might be that the bartender gets to make money, while I don't, because Uber is out there. That's a whole other show, I suppose.
Yeah, Uber's it's a good deal for the consumers, but not so good for the cabbies, huh?
Oh, I don't want to talk too badly about Michael at Activist Post. I love the guy, but he's pro-Uber, and he won't let me publish any anti-Uber articles. I wanted to publish something called, I think it was 7 Reasons Why Uber Should Not Be Allowed to Exist.
Oh, boy.
And there really is no reason for Uber to exist. Like I said, it's a whole other show. But what should have happened is that these technologies the app technologies should have been integrated into the already existing taxi cab industry. Service was about to get a lot better, but Uber just front ran everybody with all their venture capital money.
Yeah. Oh boy. So are you still driving, cab?
Yeah. I'm going back to it tomorrow. I was doing it yesterday.
Well, be careful out there, all right? And we'll reconvene at some near point in future. Really enjoyed talking with you, man.
Oh, I'd love to be back again. Thank you, John.
Sing out to us if something big breaks, or there's something to say, hey, I got to tell you about this. Even if it's an update, just come on for a little while, and give us what you got, because this chemtrail thing has been going on for 20 years, as you said, and I've been watching them since about 1998. That's when I started noticing them. And,
the dam's got to break sometime. The dam's got to break sometime, and I'm just sitting there waiting for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. God bless. Take care, all right?
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Mutual, sir. Bye-bye. Yeah, I wonder if we'll ever really know. Yeah, eventually we will, just like we eventually found out that all these corporations we held in such high esteem, it's like, they were working with the Nazis the whole time. It's kind of like finding out that your wife of 40 years has been a Soviet agent the whole time. kind of disappointing, but better to know than not know. And when people say, we had a long way to go until this election. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to let myself be driven crazy by any of it because it's all a very fluid situation. But when you hear this expression, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know, it's like, well, let's rethink that for a moment. The devil you know is a devil, but the devil that you don't know if it's a devil. So why are you saying the devil you know is preferred to the devil you don't know? If they're both devils, why don't you just stay home, right? Then what? Let's not be too quick to label people devil this or devil that. It's like was said earlier in the program when Gabriella came on. You know people by the work that they do. They may not be judged up there in at the waiting room before the waiting room before you either get to go to the good place or the bad place. You're not going to be judged on your works. You're going to be judged on who you are and who you have been to others. But down here on planet Earth where we play these games, let's go easy on those labels until we find out that the devil we know is not to be preferred to this one over here because we're not really sure that one's a devil. Got me? I know you do. Exercise caution in your daily affairs, and between now and the next time we meet, tomorrow night, let's call it an evening. Let's just keep our eyes up. In fact, since it's nighttime, why don't we put our night vision on, see if we can see anything weird flying around? Maybe a sign or portents of some sort of what's to come. Something's coming. Make ready. See you.